Hello? Are we in? Is it working? Okay. For the days following, the rain continued. Joel the rain continued. Joel, pounding, remorse, remorseless, remorseless as a headache. The hill came to resemble not so much a proud crest, the highest point south of the Urals, but a set of shoulders hunched against the downpour and the winds. Black umbrellas appeared in profusion. Skinny-legged boys clutched them earnestly while balancing books and trying to keep hats on their heads. Laughter vanished from the high street, replaced by coughing. Temperatures dropped, chills invaded, as if in sympathy with their dead friend. Boys became sick, dry coughed, or wet coughed through the night. Sprouted fevers. Older boys grumbled as rugger practices were cancelled. It's like there's nothing to do but sit and think of Theo, griped Brody, voicing the sentiments of many forced bloody mornings of bloody mourning on the day of the memorial service for Theo, presided uh, Theo presided over by Father Peter in the chapel. Sorry, I'm back. Uh, and thronged with lo, lot, lotis. It was the blackest day of all, cloud covered like a steel ceiling, and gushing, pouring rain, an absurdly tragic scene, all levitated, all alleviated, I'm assuming, momentarily by the bright rhetoric, rhetoric by the bright rhetoric and charm of the many speakers, but ruined again by the wet sobs of the smaller boys, the vindictive downpour awaiting them outside, their need to puddle hop without dignity to dining hall after and in the lot. Even the boy with the plummiest accent, a fifth former, named Clegg Bowra, who it was known personally owned a share in a Formula One team and took nothing but lessons, not sport, seriously, began holding court in the snooker room and gossiping like a charwoman. There's a there's a curse on the school, he drawled, not nasally. It's never rained like this in the history of Harrow. At this rate, it will still be raining by speech day, and we'll all be here with our parents sneezing. People are getting sick. Theo Ryder was just the first victim. I think they should close the school, personally, he continued. And Where's the communication? No one's saying what killed Theo. For all we know, it was a murder and some psychopath up in the church graveyard is lying in wait to throttle more Herodians. They hate us, the Kevins. He said using the school lingo, an Irish slur for local townie. Oh, for local townie. Due to the chill, the heat was turned on. Unseasonally, the pipes clanked and hissed. No one could get the damp out of their shoes. The felt in the snooker tables buckled. The felt in the snooker tables buckled. No explanations were forthcoming about Theo's death. Only a terse note posted on the bulletin board in the lot and signed by the assistant master, Macrae, requesting that everyone soldier on their uh, requesting that everyone their work soldier on with their work while the coroner did his and that anyone who desired to speak to a counselor should avail themselves to Mr. Macri or Matron or Father Peter. Piers Fox was conspicuously missing from the list from sight. Matron suggested to some that he was busy with arrangements with the family, who were in South Africa, and with the police and coroner. Macri seemed to be enjoying the spotlight, and Andrew suspected that the assistant master was using ab, ab, Fox at you. Macri seemed to. Andrew suspected that the assistant master was using Fox's absence as an opportunity to ingratiate himself with the boys, especially the older, more influential ones, St. John and Vaz, and their fawning crew, with teas and bowl sessions visible through the window in Macri's kitchen, just to the side of the lot in the assistant housemaster's residence. Once Andrew passed under the wind. Once Andrew passed under this window on his way to Mr. Montague's lesson, and all the faces turned to him. Vaz, St. John, and Macri in a tall black chair, with a smug but guilty look, like a dude caught trying out the king's throne. There was a moment of mutual apprehension and slow down. There was a moment of mutual apprehension. Andrew suspected they were talking about him. He moved on, ducking his head against the rain. Andrew avoiding these gatherings, he avoided the common room, the dining hall, and any place the whispers might arise. There's the American, the one who found Theo. Or the question might resume, did you see what killed him? Was there any blood? He went straight to his room after lessons, even skipping meals, getting by on a handful, getting by on a handful of biscuits the matron left for the boys in a wicker basket in the snooker room. He would sit cross-legged on his bed, spilling the crumbs on the scratchy wool blanket. He knew that he should tell someone about some of what he had seen, crazy as it was. Maybe information about vanishing skeletal strangling figure could help the detectives or the family or someone. But he also knew the most likely outcome, that he would be branded mentally ill or fatally damaged by the shock. So rather than speak out and add to the chaos and fear, he isolated himself. He did not call his parents. He did not check his email. He plunged into his lessons, abandoning TV and hallway chatters. His class on Roman Britain became, for him, an addictive serial. He wrote a five-sided essay on Cam Camel Adunum, Fortress of the War God, Ares. Nice. He read Chaucer for Mr. Montague and whiled away hours training himself to read lilting, the lilting, alliterative, inflected Middle English. From his window he watched the rain beat down on the hill. One night at dinner he found himself sitting across from Vaz. The table had seemed tense, poised. "Hello," said Vaz, pointedly. "Hey," he replied. Forks clanged on plates, but all eyes were on Andrew, flickering between him and Vaz. It seemed that the house had something to say to Andrew and had appointed Vaz its unofficial spokesman. "Everything all right?" asked Vaz, almost clumsy, almost chummy, a little too loud. "Not really," said Andrew. It's a tragedy," agreed Vaz. "Yeah, it is. Theo was an awesome guy." "People are saying he died of drugs," said Vaz. "That he got it from you." Andrew's stomach dropped. He forced himself to swallow. The table fell. He forced himself to swallow. The table fell quiet. "Why would anyone say that?" He asked. "You were caught with drugs at your old school. They wouldn't let you into university in America, so you came here." "What?" objected Andrew weakly. Vaz's eyes narrowed. "I know Theo would never take drugs. Not in a million years," piped in St. John. "So either it's a lie," continued. "So either it's a lie," continued Vaz, "or you pushed them on him." The food in Andrew's mouth turned to cardboard. He glanced around the table. All the faces. Oliver, Henry, Rhodey, Rice, Nick, Leland. Names he had struggled to learn. Turned to him, watching for his reaction. "I don't do drugs anymore," he said. I was never that into it. Just a couple of times. I don't see how you know this anyway." Vaz regarded him coolly, confidently. He definitely knew something. Andrew recalled the tableau, tableau, Vaz, Macri, and the others. Macri would probably know the background of how Andrew got to Hero. Andrew grew angry. "If it wasn't drugs," sneered Vaz, "then what happened up there with Theo? Why isn't anyone saying? If he died from drugs, he got it from me. If he died from drugs he got from me, you think I would still be sitting here?" Andrew countered, finding his voice. Vaz, undaunted, shrugged. "What is it then?" "You were there." The boys leaned in, watching Andrew. He opened his mouth. The image of the pale face rushed at him, that baying gurgle. Andrew, Andrew blanched. He pushed away from the table, infuriated and humiliated by Vaz's ignorant and implacable fat face, those black eyes that stayed locked on him, amused. Andrew stood. He walked away from the sixth former table, shaking. Psycho, he heard someone mutter. Nothing like this happened till he came. Don't mind us, we'll clean up after you, called Vaz, shoving aside Andrew's plate in a gesture of disgust. The sixth form table at the lot was not the only place where the absence of facts and the ominous rain led to speculation. It was a murder, a drug overdose, a murder by a drug gang, a mysterious illness. These these rumors led to where am I? These rumors led to calls home. Calls home produced parents' calls to the school. These calls fed indignation. Boys and masters about the unexplained situation, leading to talk of little else and ancient history. Sir, was it drugs and maths? And sir, is the school hiding something in French? Sir, was Kevin sorry? The local townspeople involved? The masters bumbled. They hadn't been briefed. The request to let the family grieve privately, to honor the dead by keeping up the mission of the school, just wasn't working. Somebody must have told the headmaster it was getting absurd. Nothing was getting done. On the third day, a school meeting was called in the speech room. Speech room where? Or speech room where? Or where? Where? What is it to be? Where words spoken with special emphasis at Harrow. They conveyed gravi- gravi- gravitas and pride. Speech room. Tucked into the hillside was the heart of the school, the site of the main school plays annual event where wait a second, I skipped a line. Main school plays, school meetings. In the summer it would be host to speech day, an annual event where sixth formers about to about to matriculate addressed students, parents, and important guests with the prepared speeches, poetry, and soliloquies. Soliloquy, soliloquies, what? A kind of valedictory address as entertainment, a display of their maturity through oratory. The day of the meeting, clumps of students pushed their way into speech room. Andrew entered, Andrew entered alone. As he shuffled his way to a seat, he felt that silence descend again. Cold, inquisitive eyes bored into him. He wished he had waited for Rhodey. Speech room was not a room, in fact, but an amphitheater seating 500 in tightly packed high-backed chairs. Stairs climbed to the back walls, and their stained glass windows, slender columns rose to to an ornate paneled ceiling. At the front rose a stage, and on it stood a podium. On this day, a day with a darkening sky at 11 in the morning, the headmaster Colin Jute took the podium, draped in his black robes, ramrod, straight with a vigorous chin, light hair going gray swept, go, going light hair going gray swept in a side part, and a cauliflower ear. He'd been a rugby player, part of his personal legend. His jowls hung balefully. Next to him slumped Piers Fox, legs crossed, slumped. Next to him slumped Piers Fox, legs crossed, with several long nights written on his face. Next to Fox sat a thin man, just 40, with wavy brown hair and tortoiseshell glasses. He was the only person on the stage not in beat robes, the only one in the room not dressed in dark colors. He wore a seasonal light green sport coat and slacks. He held a thick folder, nodded accepted, too skinny and professional. A doctor. A doctor? The man pivoted his head, bird-like, not masking his curiosities at the sight before him. Several hundred boys, washed and unwashed, beefy, prepubescent, peach-skinned, brown, the full diversity of schoolboys, despite their identical dress and narrow range of social class, fidgeting in unaccus- and fidgeting in an accustomed silence. The great semicircular room, which usually bounced with joshing and chatter, sounded only with coughs. Jeez, how many pages? It's been like 8 pages now. Usually it's not that many until the next chapter. Jeez, bro. And whispers and creaking chairs. The headmaster stepped forward to speak. The whispers faded instantly. Andrew sank into a seat. He felt sick. He closed his eyes and waited for the words. Theo Ryder was strangled on the morning of September 9th. If only someone had spotted his assailant, we might be safe today. And his killer brought to justice. The headmaster lifted his chin and started confirming the key facts that Theodore Ryder, a sixth former in the lot, died on the morning of September 9th. Ryder appeared to have been ill, and he appeared to have died of that illness. The inquest doctor, the headmaster, gestured to the man in the sport coat. Oh. Had graciously agreed to join the meeting. Dr. Sloan, even in mourning, the 500 boys could not resist a ripple of amusement. Oh, well, Dr. Sloan Moreau. Why is it spelled like that? Mrrrowww. Dr. Sloan peered at the crowd, puzzled and curious why his name would cause a stir, not realizing that to a pack of toffs having a name shared with London's Tony Sloane Square, but not being of Sloane Square, was, was pretension itself. Dr. Sloane would speak shortly and allow the boys to hear the details firsthand, to ask questions, and to satisfy themselves with, an, with the answers. This would be the first time, and the headmaster sincerely hoped the last time, or hoped the last time, the last that he would be forced to report the death of a boy at school. Theodore Ryder, the doctor, was speaking now. He gazed from his glasses, thick ones, as if staring into blinding stage lights. He spoke nasally, clinically, a computer nerd of medicine. Theodore Ryder died of pulmonary sarcoidosis, a disease which, when left untreated, attacks the function of the lungs. What was at first puzzling to us was the apparent spread of the apparent speed I'm lost. To us was the what was at first puzzling to us was the apparent speed of the onset of the disease, pushing glasses up the nose, since according to the family, Theodore exhibited none of the traditional symptoms associated with the onset of sarcoid, such as fatigue even up to the night before. Here the doctor checked his notes. Theodore Ryder's next door neighbor reported him apparently in perfect health. Andrew read Andrew reddened, flushed with a combination of relief it wasn't drugs, it wasn't a murder, and mortification. He would have given anything not to be mentioned today. Just leave me out of it, he pleaded. So, a hand shot up. Electric bolts shot up Andrew's back. What would this boy ask? Would it be about him? The doctor looked around, disoriented. The headmaster rose in a billow of gown. The boys are encouraged to ask questions, he reminded Dr. Sloane. Thank you, Mr. Clegg-Bauer. Please. The boy rose. Sir, that was Theo doing on what was Theo doing on Church Hill? Piers Fox stood quickly to explain the place name and in the doctor's ear, the place where he was found, up on the hill. I'm a pathologist, not a psychiatrist, replied Dr. Sloane, with a smile. Unctuously, therefore I cannot explain any motivation Theodore Ryder would have had for walking to a certain spot, but from a medical perspective, perhaps we can find motivation. Time of death I place between 7 and 9 in the morning. Let us assume, therefore, Theodore died while walking to breakfast. His lung volume would have been greatly reduced by the presence of granulomatous volume and swollen lymph tissue. They would be hardened, unable to stretch. He would have experienced shortness of breath, then difficulty breathing. He would have experienced acute stress as this difficulty became urgent, then life-threatening. Panic would have set in. If such an event transpired at the hospital, we would at this point take emergency measures such as inserting an endotracheal tube to force the patient to breathe. But of course, Theodore was not in hospital, so he did. I would suspect what is natural. Again, conjecture another and incongruous and wholly inappropriate smile, which is to seek high ground, associating an open environment with open air, more oxygen, which he would have badly needed since he was in effect suffocating. Colin Jute had grown intensely uncomfortable throughout his long-winded and depressing answer. He had invited the doctor to provide clinical reassurance, not to frighten the boys, and add his own colorful terms. Another hand shot up. Jute leaped to his feet and pointed, hoping the question was not a medical one. So there were no drugs involved? Barked a red-haired boy. We test we tested for drugs and found nothing, responded the doctor nasally. But that might be a question better answered by the police. The headmaster had enough of the doctor. He took back the podium. The police, he thundered, had investigated thoroughly and found absolutely no sign of drugs or crime of any kind. Theodore Ryder died of natural causes. He delivered these words in a scolding voice, implying and just let me hear any more nonsense to the contrary. This was not turning out to be the outpouring of emotion he had planned, and he was willing to force discourse the discourse back into line if necessary. More questions, the headmaster commanded. There were several. Was the infection contagious? The doctor redeemed himself here, not in the slightest. So, sarcoidosis is actually a fairly mysterious disease whose causes and development are poorly understood by science. But one thing we do know is that it is not communicable, and so on and so on. The headmaster sniffed. Not communicable was better authoritative, reassuring, something the boys could pass on to their parents. Was the body to being buried on campus in a special memorial? No. The parents had arranged transport back to Johannesburg. Would any further school days be cancelled? Their goal was not to disrupt the boys' lives any more than necessary. The headmaster relaxed much better. They were on the home stretch. He counted the minutes until he could wrap up. He pointed to the boys, raised hands, with the aplomb of a talk show host almost enjoying himself, until he pointed at the skinny fellow in the back. It sounds like tuberculosis, the boy shouted. It wasn't a question. It was a hand grenade. The room froze. The headmaster popped up like a bullfrog. You, he stammered. Now it was the doctor's turn to comment. come to the master's aid. Tuberculosis, he drawled, had an extremely low rate of incidence in England. At Clementine Churchill Hospital, they see 0 cases per year, virtually unknown. But Theo was from Africa. There are millions of cases in Africa. Okay, fair enough, belted the boy. I was there last summer. There were public warnings about spitting. The nervous rumble from the crowd. Theodore Ryder did not have tuberculosis. You just heard from the inquest doctor. Thank you. Mr. Ross, uh, Mr. Ross Collins. That is the end of that line of questioning, stormed the headmaster. He nearly hip-checked the doctor back to his seat. Shifted to housekeeping. The school would send the family a wreath and make a contribution to a charity in the boy's name. Classes would resume tomorrow. Mr. Morton would take a group tomorrow to Hairspray playing on the West End. Sign up in the classic schools. Thank you thank you all. Dismiss. When they emerged, the morning sky cast its first fat drops of the day like stones, whacking the boys' that brims as they spilled onto the speech room's promenade. The throng buzzed about the strange meeting and the provocative final exchange, and before the first boys had walked 50 yards, the drops came fast and hard and heavy, drumming the hill, and all-out artillery fire. The boys scattered, holding their boaters and their notebooks over their heads, and starting for their houses. Andrew hung back, taking refuge in a basement-level doorway. But the rain did not relent. It came down in sheets. At least he bolted out into it alone, isolated in the spray and the torrent, and finally arrived at the lot sopping wet. The lobby was packed. Boys gathered in clusters, steaming in the warmth, vigorously debating the events of the school meeting. Voices rose and chattered, eyes cast around uncertainly, as if expecting someone to pop through the door with more news. Though they could not articulate it, they all felt it. No one, not even the top man, had seen the doctor's explanation coming. Lung volume suffocating. They shivered and wiped the rain from their faces. Seeing Andrew enter, Vaz fell silent, and the others around him took his cue. Andrew stopped feeling the pierce of Vaz's black eyes. Andrew should have felt triumph. See, I told you it wasn't drugs. I told you it wasn't me. But it didn't matter. He now realized in Vaz's eyes. He was a scumbag, a stooped, shifty drug dealer. Andrew's past had come out, and it now defined him. He did not belong at Harrow, those eyes told him. He was an undesirable an interloper. Then Vaz's glance shifted, leading the rooms with it. Something behind Andrew attracted their attention. Andrew turned and saw what they saw. Pierce Fox in a raincoat, damp and unhappy looking. He led two oversized adults into the foyer. A bear-like man with a creased, overtanned face and a black raincoat. A woman with the sun-bleached hair, carefully curled but damped by the weather. Something in the woman's face was hauntingly familiar. An avian nose and deep-set eyes. Those eyes. The two groups stared at one another for a moment. One by one, the students picked up the clues. Both adults wore black. Black raincoats, black suit, black dress. The woman looked expensive, but wore no jewelry. Sorrow fogged over their faces. Their eyes were watery, their frowns deep, watching them. You had the sense that the funniest joke, the wildest adventure, could not rouse in them a speak of joy, not if you tried for weeks. And there was something else. It pulsed from the two grown-ups as they stood staring at the boys. Bitterness, envy, resentment at the living. They clearly had not expected to see such a crowd, and the sentiment just slipped out of them. Hot blood coursed through all of these boys' veins. While their son, Theo, lay refrigerating in some London funeral home. The crowd of damp boys. Wait, who's Theo again? Okay, alright. They lay refrigerating in some London funeral home. The crowd of damp boys hung back. Fox motioned for the couple to move toward the stairwell. They were on their way to Theo's room to retrieve his belongings, but the standoff continued. Mr. and Mrs. Ryder were transfixed by the vision of all the uniform formed copies of their son. Rise Davies broke the spell. He strode across the foyer and extended his hand to Mr. Ryder, then to Mrs. Ryder. Theo was the best. Theo was the best of us, he said. One by one, and then in small groups, all the boys, the six formers, and the smallest shell, followed Rise, crossing to the grieving couple and shaking their hands. They expressed their condolences, or just smiled briefly and sympathetically, and moved on. Fox watched, surprised but gratified, gratified. The parents smiled to the extent that they could. They shook hands. They murmured politely and nodded the lip. And nodded. The father was a great sunburned ape with feathery blonde hair and heavy lips. And to their surprise, it was he, not the mother, who began to blubber. He was too overwhelmed and too polite to pause and find a handkerchief, so he kept on shaking hands and nodding and thanking the boys while tears slicked his face. Matron opened Andrew's door some time later, huffing as usual. "I've been looking for you," she said. "This came for you, from Sir Alan Vine's daughter." Her Vinegarry tone left no doubt that she questioned what business Andrew had communicating with Sir Alan Vine's daughter. She held out a small purple envelope. "Andrew Taylor," the envelope announced in girlishly looping blue ink. Matron, Matron retreated. He ripped it open. "Andrew, pick me up at Headland after supper tomorrow, and we'll surprise Pierce with his new Byron. P.S. If possible, please learn to act before then. P.P.S. Sorry about your friend." He smiled his lopsided smile and sprayed himself. in spite of himself. Just what he needed, he thought. More drama. Alright, that's going to be the end of this live stream for the night. We are, tomorrow night, we are starting on page 54, chapter 4, a play about a caterpillar. I hope you all have a great, wonderful rest of your night or day, depending on where you are. And wish you good luck on whatever you have coming. Bye-bye.